And good morning. This is Brother Moses. First time getting started, so we're going to start off right. We have an excellent conversation that's planned for today, and so I'm going to jump right in it. Give you a quick introduction about myself. My name is Moses Jenkins, that is, affectionately known as Brother Moses, and this is going to be an interesting journey that I start to include and start to grow other folks in order to add some life to that journey. The first thing I want to address is that I am a little bit professional. And so I reached out to one of my mentors. Hey, big mentor, here's the path that I'm on right now. Here's what I need. He agreed, but it was so short-term notice. I know something came up. No fear. Got my cousin Ro to come in. He's agreed to have this conversation with me because it's a vital conversation. It needs to be had. I am 3 years at my company, looking to grow within that space. And I have a lot of questions about just that upward mobility. One of the things that I always hear about is that when you are looking to grow inside of a company, you need to find some people, have them in your corner. You need champions, you need sponsors, you need mentors. Coming to the table and doing a good job is only one part of it, but you have to be able to go to the next level, which is get your image out there and get exposure to those who have been in the roles, those who know how to navigate those waters. And so without further ado, my first conversation, HR, on building these human relations, I have the topic of effective mentor-mentee relationships, and I have the privilege of introducing my cousin Ro, as my co-host today. We'll be going into a quick interview style conversation with Cousin Ro. Cousin Ro, can you introduce yourself real quick, sir?
What's going on? What's going on, everyone? It's your boy Billy Rowe. Man, it's a good Saturday morning, as they say. The early bird gets the worm. We up early on a Saturday. It's not even, and as you said earlier, we've been up for a couple of hours. Just to introduce myself really quick, my name is Billy Rowe. I am one of the founders of First Row. Really big on growth, really big on inspiration, really big on being intentional with the actions that we choose to do. And as many times as Cousin Mo has been on the network with me to support the things that I am doing, I am actually happy that I get to be here to support him today. And let's make this happen. Let's make this growth thing happen, man. I'm a father. I am a professional. I'm a mentor, and I'm a mentee. So I have a lot to say about this particular topic that you want to bring to the table today, Cousin Mo.
Man, I appreciate you being able to come in on short notice. I was like calling you this morning, so I appreciate that. I mean, you kind of expected that I was going to have a conversation today. You kind of helped me set it up on the back ends, said, Mo, let's get you started. So once again, thanks for being, amiable. Is that the right word? Flexible? How you?
Yeah. I think it's amiable. Yeah. Cause it's, yeah. Malleable, amiable.
Malleable. That's the one. That's the one. It was close though. So first and foremost, something that I take out of your playbook itself. What is the topic? Effective mentor-mentee relationships. What does that actually mean to you?
Oh man, it actually means quite a bit. The reason it actually means so much is because, unlike yourself, the Morehouse man, I don't have a degree behind me to validate the information that I know. And I don't have the education behind me that would have taught me the structured path of learning the skill set that I have today. So mentorship is something that is critical to the place that I'm at professionally in life, but it's also critical to the place that I'm at personally in life as well today. Having people who have spoken into my life, having people who have really given me the best of them in hopes so that I could become the best of me has been critical to my journey into manhood, has been critical to my journey into the professional realm. So this topic really is to me about everything about who I am today, based on the people who have taken the time to pour into my life. And as I'm now kind of, I just celebrated my birthday this week as I am
transitioning. Happy birthday, big cousin.
Appreciate it. As I'm transitioning from that, where, we were still very young men and we're still a little more mistake prone, as I'm transitioning in from that young young gangster, the young G to the OG. For me, it's about now looking at how can I be an effective mentor to pour back into those who are coming up behind me? How can I help pave that way and clear some of those weeds and some of that brush off the path so that they have a little clear path to walk through as they clear even more brush as they make their move through. So that's what it means to me. It's very pivotal. It's very centric to who I am.
Absolutely. And it can be transformational. You bring up that transitionary period, right? So it felt like when I was that young G, I had some people who just invested in the community, and they just got this, and they came and grabbed us from wherever we were, whether it was through the faith-based institutions where we attended, the school, and even some who were just inside of the community who were like, you're coming with us. There were a lot of folks who wanted to be mentors too, who were really in that street life. They really wanted to mentor us in a direction as well. So that was there. But then I'm glad that we had some who were a little bit stronger, a little bit more influential. They wanted to give us some spiritual guidance as well. And they knew that if they could just plant the seed at an early age, that it could develop and grow into something well as those now that we're in that professional space. And so I definitely agree, once again, that I'm in that professional space or wanting to grow in that professional space. So that's why I think we'll kind of stay grounded today. Just so we can keep the chat, honest, right? So right. This is work related. It does say HR, those things that you probably want to have a conversation about, but really, do you really trust it? Have you found that person yet? Well, that's what you got us for. You got a brotherhood of people who are out here who are willing to have that conversation with you. So let's work on building that network as well for these areas in our lives that are important. Why is mentoring important for anybody in the chat or in the restream? Somebody who just may find this content and say, oh, they might be Googling how to start a mentor relationship, and this comes up. Why is having that mentor important, or being a mentor important? Whichever one you want to tackle first.
Let's do having the mentor first. I think leadership is important, and that's really what mentorship is. It's a leader taking a follower personally and guiding them. So if you take let's say we want to go on a safari, and we're in the jungles of the Amazon, and so we're not now on a safari. We're just going to go on an expedition in the jungles of the Amazon. If you and I, as two people who have never been to the Amazon, two people who are not aware of the dangers of the Amazon, go walking through the Amazon, there's a chance that we may get hurt, lose our lives, struggle with the journey in and of itself because we get lost. All these things may come up without having that guide, without having that mentor in place. But if we take time and we say, you know what, I'm going to hire a guide who's familiar with the landscape, who understands the different plant life, understands the animals that are in the Amazon and the things that we need to be aware of. If we take that person in the Amazon with us, our ability to enjoy the journey, our ability to fully experience the beauty of the journey becomes that much more possible. So when you say, why is a mentor important, it's because they have a working knowledge of where you want to be and where you may want to go. So without that guide in place, it just becomes a perilous journey, like in certain areas. And when you take that same concept and bring it into the corporate realm, when you may come from, all of us in the corporate realm come from different backgrounds. So certain things that are acceptable or that are we'll just say acceptable. Certain things that are acceptable or palatable in the corporate background may not work well in the neighborhood you grew up in. Vice versa, things that were acceptable in the neighborhood you grew up in, that may not work well in the corporate setting. So an example of that is the neighborhood we grew up in. If you say something to me that is a little off key, or, like you say something about my mama, back then I had to fight you because you were disrespecting me. And that was how disrespect was handled. It was handled with a physical altercation. Well, physical altercation doesn't translate well into the corporate workplace, and people in the corporate workplace can be disrespectful. So that is where I think that's why I think mentorship is important, because you have somebody who may or may not be from your same background, but they are familiar with where you are at presently, and they can show you the ropes, show you how to successfully navigate through some of the minefields that you might find yourself, or the mines that you might find yourself stepping on in corporate America. And then your second question was, if you could repeat that, Cousin Mo, please.
So for the mentee, definitely grab that, getting that guide and being able to navigate. You know, there's some things that you might want to avoid, especially if career satisfaction. Sometimes you can find real friends as coworkers. Sometimes they remain coworkers. Sometimes you can find friends. And if that's important to you, or if it's just, you know, having that avenue to pay your bills. And so I'm just here so I don't get, you're in beast mode. If that's important to you, being that mentee can be important. Why is it important from the mentor position, though, to be that strong guide?
So from the mentor position, there's a couple of things, and I, you know, we're gonna keep it transparent. I think some of it is ego driven, and I don't mean ego in a bad way. I think we sometimes take the word ego and we make it into a negative, but ego in the sense of it feels good when you're able to reach back and help somebody through some things that you've been through. That feels good, and that is a feeding of your ego. However, as long as your ego doesn't go out of control, that's healthy. It's something that should encourage you to go and give back. One of the things that I've written in some of my personal writings is that I believe it is every older person's secret desire that the youth of the era after them come to them and seek them for advice and wise counsel, because it makes you feel as if some of the decisions that you made were the right ones, and you know all the mistakes you made. We keep a running tally of those in our head, but that younger generation coming and saying, hey, how do I do this? How did you do this? That is something that is edifying to a person, to say, man, I may have made some mistakes along the way, but there's still some value and still some worth in the things that I have to bring to the table and the insights that I have to share. So from the mentor standpoint, I think that is part of it. However, the other part of it as a mentor is learning is a two-way street. So as a mentor, you might have a certain type of communication that you've used your entire life that has been effective with every person you have come across. And now that you have a mentoree, your job is to make sure that that communication remains effective. Well, that path of communication you've been using may not be effective with that person. So let's say with me as a father, as I think being a father makes me a mentor as well. If all I ever do is yell at my children, and that's the path that I take, when you're in trouble, I'm going to yell at you. I'm going to scream, shout, kick, and all those different things. That may work in certain situations, but then that may not work in other situations. So as the mentor of my children, I have to be able to say, okay, what's the effective way to talk to them? I'm going to use a calm, concise voice. I'm going to use clear and understandable logic, and we're going to get to the root of these things. That is the way that I work on with some of my children. Other children, I'm like, okay, so if I'm not yelling, you're not hearing me. So then I have to decide as the mentor, is that the example I want to set as the yelling example? Or do I want to set the example of this is how you structure and work through communication. This is how you effectively listen to that. So I think there's some growth opportunities, though you may be a mentor, there's growth benefits for the mentor as well, that come to the surface, because in interacting with humans, we have to be agile and adaptable. And so that ability to be agile, or that necessity for agility, drives each side to both grow simultaneously. So there's some definite benefits for the mentor. And I think the last benefit for the mentor, which is also a very good thing for the mentee, is seeing the growth of the mentee. Like realizing that somebody decided to come to you to help them on their path, and that you have helped them grow to a point where they are now being promoted amongst their peers. They are now being sought after as the wise counsel because of what you have poured into them. So I think those are some of the benefits of being the mentor. And they may not seem, oh my God, they're so grandiose, but in the big picture of what resonates on the inside of me, those things really reach my heart.
Oh, absolutely. So it kind of molds into my second question. You know, you got to get into the what do you really want to know part. So for me, it's like, well, what do I do? I'm early in the relationship already. I've identified somebody who has a skill set. They have a good brand. They've been in the company. They've moved in. They're in a senior leadership position. They've managed people, which is one of the things that I was looking for in a mentor. Not only have they managed people, they've managed to help those people find roles and that align with their skill set. So they were under their team for a while, and now they've gone to other places. So I immediately identify that as a plus. When they walk into the room, they have a presence, right? So people know them, people shake their hands, people even stand up to shake their hands. They stop their conversation. So it's that, that sense of that grandiose or importance that was like, wow, that was the first thing that was there, was like, they command the room, they have a presence, and people relatively respond well to that presence. And so that's what I was also looking for. So they're meeting those things. And then I'm like, so how do I let them know that I'm looking to build a mentor-mentee relationship? What are some of the things that I should be looking at doing early on in the relationship?
Oh man. So how do you let them know is a very direct approach. Like, if you want going back to that guide mentality, I can walk around the city in the city by the Amazon and look at people funny and inquisitively and not ask them a single question. Those people who are guides are not going to know that I'm looking for a guide. And you don't want to leave it up to chance that somebody coming up to you and saying, "Hey, are you lost? Do you need help?" It's much more effective when you're intentional. And so for me, when I was 16 or 15, I can't remember the age exactly. I remember that at that age, I noticed that a lot of children had godparents. And I did not have godparents. As a matter of fact, my sister had a godparent. And when I was born, he said he didn't want to be my godfather. Okay, cool. I understand. I don't understand, but that's your prerogative. But at 15, 16, and when I started seeing people with godparents that, interacted with them and seemed to have poured wisdom into them, I went up to the director of my choir at the church I attended. And I was like, I went to him and his wife and I said, I don't have a godparent or godparents. And I would really be honored if you guys would be my godparents, because I like what you guys represent as a married couple. I like how you pour into us as youth and things of that nature. So I had to be intentional about that. They weren't walking around looking for who they could be the godparent to. They didn't have a necessarily strong relationship with my biological parents. So I had to go out and seek that. And looking for a mentor is very much like that. Is about being intentional and going and saying, "Hey, I like where you're at professionally, or I like some of the things that you bring to the table. Here's what I would like you to help mold me in, if you would be open to being my mentor." And I don't feel like in the corporate world that a lot of us do that. I feel like in the corporate world, a lot of us try to wait for that person who sees us to take us under their wing and say, "Okay, here, let me mold you and let me help you learn about your professionalism." I have actually experienced quite I don't want to say significant failures, but I have experienced some failures professionally because of my lack of understanding of how to navigate the corporate workscape. So, I come from the hood. So there's just, like I said, there's some things that didn't transition well for me from the hood to corporate America, being very combative, being very like approachable in one sense, but on the other sense, the only word is combative in taking feedback and coming up with action plans and not really trying to take into consideration too many people in my action plan. And so it took some mentors who kind of like were indirect mentors. They didn't say, "Hey, I'm going to mentor you," but it took me listening to what they were going to say. And I think the last person that I worked for before I started understanding the importance of mentors in the corporate workplace, when I was getting ready to leave, I said, "Hey, what's the feedback you can give me about how I could have been better in this professional environment?" And he said, "In corporate America, you have to be able to identify your allies and the people who are not your allies. They're not necessarily your enemies, but they're not necessarily your allies." And once you identify your allies, you got to build the stronger relationships with them. And so when I went into my next role, I took that mindset of, okay, who are my allies? Who's going to help me get from point A to point B? And then from there, being able to say, okay, this is what I'm going to do to make myself stronger with them leading the way, with them taking some of those blocks as like a running back. Hey, you go ahead and block these people and I'm gonna run through with the ball. So that for me is where the mentorship, how do you go about getting one? It's by asking, by first observing, seeing what it is that you see that somebody has that you want, or somewhere that somebody's at where you want to be, and then specifically asking that person. Or even if they're not able to be, ask for, hey, who can you refer me to? Who got you to where you're at? Maybe they have some time to mentor me.
Appreciate it. Quick commercial break. This is Brother Moses, HR Live. We got some people in the chat. Thank you all for coming in and joining us live here. If you have any questions, any feedback that you would like to contribute to the topic, we do understand that it is a bigger thing. Someday in the future, could be years from now, somebody will be Googling or they'll be on the YouTube searching, how do I find a mentor? And if this is the video that comes up, any of your feedback that you would like to contribute that helps them on their journey as well, we would appreciate that while you help us on our journey. So it is a Saturday morning. We're having a great conversation here with my co-host, the person who originated the first row, Cousin Ro. I know y'all may have anticipated my first guest to be Bill Buford. His professional profile was there in the description box. 20 years of experience. I'll try to get him on later. He had some things come up, but I'll reach out and still try to get him on. But Cousin Ro is filling in. We've talked about a couple of things. First, why is it important to be a mentor? Why is it important to be a mentee? How do you go about doing it? Those first early stages. What are you looking for? So you're observing, you found somebody that's in the role already. What are they doing? They have some skill sets. They have just a demeanor when they walk into the room. And this can be your guide. This can be the person in that safari that helps you out. Started off at a young age, right? Where mentors seem to come and grab us. In other senses, when you were looking, it could have been like a spiritual guide or someone in those senses. Did you have a godfather or godparents? Being able to reach out and connect with them, bring them into the loop and say, here's what I'm looking for. Can you help me kind of navigate these waters? That pivots and translates well into the professional scene. And so we're going to pick back up where we're at. Maybe one day I can get some music to come in right there on my commercial breaks. But until then, we'll get back into the conversation or this conversation that we're having with Cousin Ro here, talking about effective mentor-mentee relationships. Cousin Ro, you still with me? I think I heard you laughing.
Yeah, I was laughing at you. Yeah, no, we get some music, get some smooth jazz.
We're gonna get some smooth jazz right for a quick commercial break. You know, you got to wake them up and then get back to the content. So, all right, a couple of things where we were at. You were telling me something that really strikes a chord with me, right? So I've done my observations, and now I'm having the conversations. I was bold. I reached out, and now I'm starting to have those conversations. You were saying a part of level setting is the word that I use, but you were saying the action plan. Be able to take that feedback from those early conversations, then create an action plan. I want to, I'm going to work on A, B, and C, and I think D is what we may need a follow up on. So I'm going to call you in about 3 weeks after I've started trying to make myself uncomfortable with some of these challenges. Reaching out and connecting more, getting second, working on communication styles, not eating alone in the lunchroom, some of these things that you may get from that mentor-mentee relationship. But let's do it in reverse as well, right? So there are some professionals who are in sales leader positions. What does it look like from the mentor's position? How do they set expectations on, here's what I expect from you as a mentee? Like, is it all right to be direct and say, look, if I provide you feedback, this isn't free. I'm gonna need you to follow up and get on my calendar, twice a week or twice a month. That roadmap, that communications, the expectations. How does that kind of come? How does that happen from a mentor's perspective?
So the fortunate thing is I'm actually in a mentorship program currently in my place where I work at. And setting those expectations from the mentor standpoint is really initially about almost the same way as being a mentee, is about listening. Where is this person trying to go? Where are they trying to arrive at? What are they trying to get from you? Because then once you know what that is, now you can set the expectation and the standards that are required for them to get that from you if you have it to give. And so in the mentorship relationship that I'm in right now, which is, I think, all of like a week or 2 weeks old at this point. We had a very open, upfront conversation from the beginning. Hey, what is it that you're looking for me? What do you think you can get? Here's what I think I can learn from you. Here's what I think I can provide for you. But it really comes down to understanding that in order for the mentor to be successful, the person who's the mentee has to feel like they have received what they had asked for initially. And if the mentor is not listening in the beginning to what the mentee is looking to obtain or looking to where they're looking to grow, then the mentor is not going to necessarily have that success story of, yeah, this person was guided under my mentorship to their greatness, to their success. If you don't have that, then what effect do you have as a mentor? Like, what exactly are you doing? Are you simply introducing people to other people? Then you're not a mentor, you're a network person. You're just plugging and playing the connections that need to happen. And though that is a very important, relevant role, as a mentor, it's the role is just a little different. You're actually taking that person under your wing and saying, here's how I'm going to nurture you. Here's how I'm going to give you the substance that you need in order to grow into a mature professional person in corporate America, if that's where you're working, or a mature professional entrepreneur if you have your own business. So it's really about listening to that initial conversation to find out not only what the mentee is looking for, but associating that to what you can actually provide that mentee going downstream to them. The challenge with being a mentor is it's not like a system that you can necessarily plug and play people into, because each person is different. We learn different, we speak different, we comprehend different, all kinds of things. So it's really about having the concept of how you're going to customize what it is you have to offer at the core, how you're going to customize that to make it digestible for the person who is consuming that core information from you. And so I think that's really the way it goes with a mentor. And with my current mentor, I knew just from our initial conversation that we were going to be a really good fit. And even in conversations that we're having about the cadence of how often we interact with each other, we're pretty much on the same wavelength with that, where, the program we're in, they're only like, hey, at the most or at the minimum, you got to interact at least once a month. He reached out to me, was like, hey, so they're saying we can interact once a month. I really want to at least do twice a month and any other time in between. In the interim of that conversation, I got tapped for a potential position working for a different organization. And so I reached out after that conversation. I reached out to my mentor. Hey, here's what my thoughts are. What can you give me from you having these different career changes and shifts? What can you give me to help me understand how to best make the decision for myself? So I'm not asking you to make the decision for me as a mentor, which is another thing we'll probably get into a little bit later, but I'm asking you to help guide me into making the decision that's best for me. And so that is not within that 2-week cadence. That's in like, hey, random thing came up, random opportunity that I need to connect with you. Do you have a minute? And he took 10 minutes of his time to sit and have a quick conversation with me and help me get clearer on my thoughts about what my next step should be.
You know what? I didn't even realize it, but when I came into the company I'm at, I was brought in as a part of the business leadership program as well. And I think I'm hearing some similarities even there. Like if I could go back and do this business leadership program again with the insight that you just provided me right there, I'd probably be so much further, because like right when I was in it, I was busy just experiencing it. And I probably wasn't as intentional as I could have been because I didn't have this insight, right? Getting on those calendars, having those conversations, understanding that I was where I was at in my journey, and then intentionally looking 3 steps down the line and then connecting those pieces, right? There are some people who could have been instrumental and helpful in those early stages. And there are people who are still there now that probably don't know my story and can't really relate to the things that, I've experienced, because I never reached out to them and connected with them on that and never even asked. So, wow, I got to appreciate that right there while it just happened.
Hey, appreciate you. Bam.
and drop the mic right there. So communication style, there's another one of those things where I'm challenged with. And so I got to ask, that line between this is my mentor and we're speaking about professional challenges and this is my mentor, but I have some things going on in my personal life that I really need to learn how to compartmentalize or to release to vent, or my manager themselves in my professional life are doing some micromanaging and I think our styles are conflicting. Talk to us about managing that communication. Like what's off limits, what should be on limits? Is it always business? Should it sometimes be personal? In your experience, you have any insights right there that you can provide from your experience?
Yeah, I do. And it's hard for me because I'm a personal or personable person. But I'm also a private person. However, in the relationship of a mentor and a mentee, that really is an intimate relationship. It is not the same relationship that you would have with just your everyday coworker. So there is a very, there may be because mentorship can be outside of the professional realm, but inside the professional realm, it's a different relationship. And as I think you and I both know, what goes on in our personal lives impacts our professional life in some way, shape, or form. And because it impacts our professional life in some way, shape, or form, you can't create a wall or a divisor between the professional and the personal. Like, oh, my personal business is my personal business. If you have solicited someone to be your mentor, then you should be willing to put that wall down and allow that information to flow. Because if you genuinely want their help and you genuinely want their insight, you don't want them giving you that with half of the picture. You want them to give you that with the full picture. So if I'm like, I'm stressed because I'm behind on my mortgage, they're getting ready to foreclose on my house. My car keeps breaking down and I'm worried about what it is, if I'm going to get to work on time, and the professional persona that I'm building at work, or my reliability. And then I say, I want to be more reliable professionally and more present in the workplace. Without those first two, they don't know how to effectively address that. So now, instead of just, okay, well, this is how you get to work 5 minutes early. Yeah, but my car is breaking down. Well, you can't get a new car, or you can't repair your car if you don't have money to do it. And you can't get a new, more reliable car if you don't have the credit to do it. So we go back to the mortgage issue. Okay, so what is taking place in your budget to where you're not paying your mortgage? Okay, let's get a structured plan to deal with the mortgage. Now the mortgage is off the table. So now you're not behind in your bills. You're not struggling from check to check, behind 2 checks in pay, trying to pay bills that are due today. Now you can focus on either the car repairs or getting your credit right so that you can get a car that is more reliable, to now address the very first professional issue about being reliable and on time. Now you can address that. Now that you're here on time, now we can get to the true core of what you wanted to resolve professionally, which was being more present. So that way you can be the go-to person in the meetings, that you could be the go-to person for the special projects. But without that full information, you don't even get to where you want to be. I always say that a lot of people want what other people have, but are not willing to do the work that other people did to get what they had. So that is the critical part of that communication between a mentor and a mentee. That's not just a professional relationship. Oh, we're just professionals. No, that's an intimate relationship. And in an intimate relationship, if you think of the relationship you have with your partner, your spouse, your boyfriend, your girlfriend, if you think of those relationships, how would you feel if it was like, oh, well, we were struggling and you didn't say anything? There was no communication that took place. That doesn't work well for that relationship, because it's an intimate relationship, and that doesn't work well for mentor-mentee relationships, because that is also an intimate relationship. Now, the one thing I will say is a mentor-mentee relationship may have tough love in it. However, that tough love should not come from the mentor in the same manner as which, like I said before, where I grew up at. It shouldn't come in the same manner in which it would come from somebody you personally grew up with, knew you for 35 years. Like, that love shouldn't come from that lens. Because again, what you've known, when you've known me for 35 years, you know enough about me to know how to approach me on that level. But when it comes from a mentor, it can be very direct and say, okay, so are you going to get your shit together or not? My bad. I didn't mean to cuss on your show, Cousin Mo. Are you going to get your stuff together or not? Is that what you're going to do? Because if you're serious about this mentor-mentee relationship, if you're serious about it, then I'm serious about it with you. But if you're not, then let's not waste either one of our times. That is what, to me, that communication looks like. It's clear, it's transparent, it's concise, but it evolves around both the personal and the professional, because that is how they're going to make the best decision and give you the best results that you're seeking as the mentee.
That's great. I was like even when you said, are you going to get your shit together or not? It took me back to my my first rotation, the program that I was in. There was 3 rotations, and the very first one was with a veteran like myself. And so that's his way of speaking. It was pull you to the side and say, are you going to get your shit together or not? And that's what I prefer, rather than some HR, they have a script, they have a code to where they have to do it a certain way, or they're liable or whatever it is. That's not the type of relationships that were most effective for me. And so that really made it resonate. Maybe that was an opportunity to kind of work on building a stronger mentor-mentee relationship if I would have had some of these tools or had this conversation earlier on. So appreciate that. Let me see. Beyond communication, though, balancing that professional and that personal, that's probably going to be to each their own, as they understand where their comfort levels are in relationships in general, is what I kind of pull from yours. So I guess the major question then is, can you give some examples of how to be candid, or how to have candid, meaningful conversations? So you talked about the mortgage from the personal sense. But when it comes to role clarity, I want to ask, I'll give a couple of examples, and then you kind of respond. This is where I want to kind of dive a little deep, is on the examples of communication, or candid, meaningful communication between a mentor and mentee. All right. So I'm going to assume the role of a mentee. You assume the role of a mentor, and then we'll kind of play it from there. All right.
Gotcha.
All right. I know you can work on the fly, brother. So, option number 1, Cousin Ro, I want this management position. I know that in the long term, I'm sales oriented. And so becoming a sales leader and then a general manager only comes if you've actually effectively managed people. So I'm looking to move into a manager role. I've predominantly been inside of roles, though, that are individual contributor. How do I tell my story that helps my HR folks, or the people, my hiring managers who I'm interviewing with, understand the value that I bring, and to help close this I guess is this deal when I'm going into this interview process on transitioning from individual contributor to now I'm managing people.
So from the individual contributor, let's start there, because that's where you would be at today in this example. The individual contributor historically has been seen as an isolated entity within an organization, because you don't work with a team. You don't really interact outside of your own workload. You're just doing what your job is and delivering upon those results. However, even as an individual contributor, you are in a prime position to be a part of the team, because there is a firewall when you don't work for a company. And I've spoken about this before. When you don't work for a company, you are on the outside of the firewall. You can't get in easily. Like, you can maybe hack your way in and get through that firewall, but it's not a clear, easy path for you to take. When you are an individual contributor, you are on the other side of that firewall. So you already have access. You don't have to do the upfront work of getting through the firewall. You're already beyond that. You now have access to network within the organization, irregardless if you work with those people or not. And so the first part is being an individual contributor is making sure that you're still, even while you're in your Cousin Mo Island, that you are still branching out to people who are your peers, people who are not even in your department. There's things that I know in my organization today about the floor that I'm on, the people that are on the floor, that we don't even work in the same type of work. But I know about their lives. I know about their professional career. I know about their progress, and I've networked with them to the sense of, if there is something that they have a question in regards to what I do, they come and they say, hey, Billy, you do this. They only know that not because I'm contributing anything to their specific department, but they know it because of the conversations and the network that we have established with each other. So that's the first thing is getting outside of the island and send out some lifelines. So that way, just in case your island starts to sink and you find yourself on the wrong side of a layoff, you have a network that you can actually reach out to and say, hey, you know, what I used to do, and based on the conversations we had, is no longer going to be done here at this organization. Maybe I can come over and start doing some of the things that you do that we've talked about in the past. That's the first thing. And then number two, when it comes to transitioning from that individual contributor to management, it's not about can you execute and can you contribute. It's about soft skills. And you're going to see more and more and more in the corporate world, the conversation of about soft skills coming up, because in corporate America, especially where we're at now, where you can't just talk to somebody any old kind of way, in corporate America, how you speak to people is going to be just as important, if not more important, than what you are actually saying to them. So that is the challenge, because you'll see when you look at statistic information, I don't have any on the fly, but when you look at statistic information about why people leave the jobs that they're at, it's not because they don't get paid enough. It's not because of long hours of work. It is because they do not feel valued. And value is something that we as humans typically receive via communication. It's through praise. Hey, you did a really good job on that. Thanks for delivering that. It's through giving us the right types of tasks and the right types of manners. Not like, hey, I'm going to let you get in on this particular one and, you know, get your feet wet. It's like, no, I believe that you can do this. And so I'm going to give you this special project just to show other people that you can do it. It's that. And so people leave when they don't feel valued. They leave when they don't have that connectivity to the organization. So going into the manager aspect, it's not about just saying, oh, well, I can contribute individually, so obviously I can contribute at the management level. It's about, I can contribute individually, but look at all these other relationships that I've fostered in my individual efforts of contributing. And that is what we call organic promotion. You're promoting organically because it is a common sense to see that if you were contributing independently and you were still able to foster these healthy, functional working relationships, organically, the people that you fostered those with are going to begin to see you as a leader because you're delivering and you're connected to them. They're like, man, you're really good for leadership. That's when you move into organic. And that's how you show leadership that I'm the guy you want managing these people, because I, number one, already have great relationships with them as a peer. And number two, I'm going to teach them how to execute independently, but also collectively as a team. So that is, I believe that's how that's happened. And I've seen that happen when I've worked personally in an organization where I was ready to be a supervisor. And I was like, why haven't we moved me to a supervisor yet? And that may seem arrogant, but that was really where I was at. I was like, this is a job I can do. And the person pulled me to the side and said, yeah, we like to see our leaders grow in the organization organically. So I started becoming really intentional about having conversations with other people about, you know, tell me about the claims process. Tell me about this process. Tell me about that process. Tell me, sitting and putting on my calendar and their calendar. Hey, let me sit 30 minutes with you to learn about what it is that you do. And it got to the point that I didn't even get the supervisor promotion, but it got to the point that people in the department who were my peers were coming by my desk and saying, hey, congratulations on the promotion. That's organic. Because if they're saying, as the people who work with me, congratulations on the promotion, at some point the leader has to say, well, man, these people are ready to follow this guy. These people are ready to follow this woman. And so that's what I think it shows, is when you set that network up in your individual accomplishments, it shows that organic leadership. And it's because you're branching out to be understanding and understand the business in its entirety, not just the cog that you are in the machine.
I think you may just have to ditto it. But my second alternative, look, Thanks for the feedback on the first role, looking for the manager. Went through the interview process, got to the second level. There was 4 levels, didn't make it all the way through. So now we're considering this next option. You know, we did have a next alternative scenario. Sales is strong, but I'm actually an analyst. I know it. I love the data Excel. I love making the data sing, creating those actionable insights that drive growth, that drive performance and productivity. So there's an analyst role that just opened up, but it's not in our department. It is somewhere else. As my mentor, what are some of the things that I should be doing or looking at? Do you know anybody that I might be able to connect with on those other floors? Can you make an introduction? Are these the type of things that should be said in the mentor-mentee relationship, Cousin Ro?
Absolutely. Not only should those things be said as the mentor, my job is if I don't have the knowledge of where the plug and play is in the network, I should do some of that research to give you your homework. So I shouldn't be like, well, you should just ask around. That's not mentorship. Ask around is not a clear, concise path of action. Ask around who? The cafeteria lunch lady? Like, where am I supposed to ask around at? But if I'm like, okay, so there's a department down there, right? It's a department that is full of analysts. Why don't you go and have some of those lunchroom conversations and ask them if they wouldn't mind you shadowing them? Shadowing is a very good way to get your face on the radar. And once your face is on the radar, eventually somebody says, who is that? That gets your name on the radar. And so if you can get to a place to have those types of conversations where you can go and create shadowing opportunities. I do this quite frequently in the organization that I'm in, where I'll say, hey, you know, they want me to help you with your reporting. However, I don't know what you do. I'm going to come down and shadow you for the day, and you just show me some of the things that you do. And then I can insert myself and help make the process more efficient. So now I'm known in a department that's not my department, under a business line that's not my business line. But my work is known and my name and my face is known because of the fact that I'm doing that. The other way of going about getting into that, let's say you don't have a direct line to go into shadowing. The other way of doing that in the organization, at least that I'm in, is we call them ERGs, employee resource groups. So larger companies tend to have different employee programs or groups or clubs that you can be a part of. Interacting in those groups is very effective. And that is how, for me, in the mentorship program I'm currently in, that's how I got into the mentorship program, is by being in that in one of the employee resource groups. They sent out a mentorship application. I got it because I look at my emails, I seen it, and I applied. And now I'm linked with a senior director in the organization as a mentor for the next 6 months, who's going to also expose me to his network. I'm going to expose him to my network. And then when I have certain things that I need or certain questions, hey, you know what? I might have an expert in this area who I can reach out to and ask. Let me see what answer he gives me on that topic. So there's that aspect that you can take as well. If you can't get to the shadowing aspect, to where you're sitting in the department coming from sales, hey, I'm a sales guy. I'm good at selling the product. I'm good at getting the customer, closing the business. However, I'm also looking at these reports from an analytical standpoint, and I think there are some areas for improvements in there. Can I come and sit with you and see what it is that you guys are doing and why you guys are presenting the information in this way, just so I can have a better understanding of your environment? Those are the types of conversations that you have to have. But a lot of times what we find ourselves talking about are the PC things in corporate America. Oh, we could talk about sports teams. Oh, we could talk about, non-offensive breaking stories in the news. We could talk about our kids. We could talk about our family. Like, we can talk about these PC things, but we don't have intentional business conversations with a specific objective of building the relationship for a specific reason. Like, I want to get into analytics. I was placed into analytics not because I was having those shadowing opportunities, but I also took the time to just simply thrive in the area I was working in. And I didn't know that the person who was in analytics was walking past my desk, eavesdropping into the conversations that I was having with clients while I was providing them excellent service. I didn't know that he was sitting there thinking like, hey, this guy might be the guy that I can bring in who changes my department. I didn't know that. But once he said, hey, what's your analytical mind like? Oh, you're interested in my analytical mind? Let me tell you about it. And so I already knew the conversations when that conversation was going to come up. I didn't know it was going to come up with him, but when that analytical conversation came up, I already knew what my highlights were. I'm very strong in Excel. I'm formulaic in my approach to certain things. I'm good at developing strategies. I'm great at understanding proprietary technology. I'm good at learning things and applying the lessons that I'm learning from them. Like, those are the things that come from my analytical mind. And so then when it was like, okay, in my mind, how can I show you that I'm analytical? Why don't you give me something that is on paper, that's just a bunch of calculations on paper? Why don't you give me that, and I will duplicate that for you in Excel, to where we would no longer have to use the piece of paper, because that saves us time. That keeps us from having to receive faxes. That keeps us from using calculators and pencils to calculate things that we need to know, that we can know instantly and in real time. And so when I did that, now all of a sudden I'm brought into the analytical side of the house. And now I start to get thriving and showing through more and more consistent actions that I can handle more and more responsibilities. And that's how I got into the analysis side. It wasn't because I was simply, oh, well, I'm a great analyst. No, I wasn't an analyst yet. But I was an exceptional customer service representative. I was an exceptional dedicated account representative. There was not anybody that I had as a client that I could not call and say, hey, I'm working on it. And they wouldn't believe me. They'd be like, Billy's working on it. He's got it. And if they even had to follow up with their management team, they would say, I've talked to Billy and Billy said he has it. He will get me the answer when he has the answer. And I am certain of that. So that is what it is. It's being effective in where you're at. Sometimes you just got to be so bright where you're at that people have to say, what's that light over there? What's that going on over there? Who's that over there shining? Oh, that's just us over here working on our jobs with a sense of excellence. That's who it is. And then the other side being trying to reach out and getting into those employee networks and building that network to where you can go and actually have those shadowing opportunities to sit in where you want to be at, even if you don't get to be there. Sitting and getting that knowledge and seeing what the day-to-day is helps with you go on an interview and you're like, hey, I got to shadow in this department. Unfortunately, the opportunity wasn't there in the organization that I'm in, but I did get to shadow in this department. And I think that I have what it takes to be successful in this type of work. And I would love to join your team. That's what my advice would be.
Absolutely. So with that, a lot of powerful information. We're going to take our last commercial break right here. We got about 7 minutes left. When we come back, we'll do our quick takeaways to things that we would like to leave you with. But I got to throw in the disclaimers, right? So just like most people who have these content pages that they want to provide information, they want to know how to continue to grow the information that's most relevant to you. So in order to submit the topic ideas for the first row, you can send them with your name, your state, the topic, the show name. If that's what you've come up with, a whole little template and you understand what it is that would be helpful to other folks in the future, send those to topics, TOPICS at firstrow.com. One thing that I would like to see a lot of folks doing is to start the networking, right? So if it is professional, there is a LinkedIn. I do have one that is linkedin.com/IN/son of Morehouse. I'm a Morehouse man, so that's how you can find me on LinkedIn. But using LinkedIn as a tool, using Instagram for social media, I've heard that there's some integrated marketing that's starting to happen when there's YouTube content. People are doing their stores or their online shops. They're starting to use Instagram. If you have one of those, feel free to start connecting that way. And always there's Facebook. It is still a key driver in the digital space towards staying connected. Now, at any of those spaces, you can also put in that /first row to connect with us in this channel on social media. And that's another way that you can engage topics. Let us know what you think about these shows. We would really love that interaction. So that's my commercial break. Be sure to subscribe. Be sure to like. We're going to close out with some key takeaways. My top 3 right now, kind of in inverse. My number 1, Cousin Row, is moving off of that island, right? Moving from that island into the safari. So I'm off the island. In order to get off my island, I was shining bright. People started to notice me, and there's job opportunities and things that are available to me. Now, how do I kind of navigate those waters? There was an open water out there, and I really would like to know. In fact, it's not even an open water. There's a whole new territory out there. It's a safari. And the first thing that we might need to do is find ourselves a safari guide so we're not walking alone. So finding that safari guide is why having those mentor-mentee relationships are important, because when you move off of that that island, there are people who are connected in spaces, people who can have conversations, people who have already developed a network. So if there's any challenges that you might experience or some things that you just would like to know, they can open doors and make introductions for you, as well as they can help have those conversations that allow for personal development and growth in your own in your life. So definitely have that, as well as what's in it for them, right? They're going to be edified, right? They have somebody, that success story, that knowledge that they can pass along. From an HR perspective, we're keeping the talent in-house. Career satisfaction, job satisfaction is important. And so by having those folks engaged who are senior leaders, engaging at the next level, and those who want to become managers, those who want to, consider, changing functions, and having that as in-house, rather than people going on Google or going to other jobs or Glassdoor to find what else is out there. If they can find it within their own company, then that's probably in the best interest, keeps morale high. You said one of the avenues is those internal networks like affinity groups or diversity networks. That's a good avenue as a testing ground on making those connections, but essentially being that type of individual who's bold and willing to go knock on some doors, get on some calendars and say, hey, would you mind if I sit with you and learn about it? Being curious and inquisitive, that's a way that you can actually start to grow, develop people, and learn skill sets, but as well as potentially find those mentors in the mentee relationships. I know I said that's my number one, but I just wrapped them all up in a bow. Hopefully that's powerful for everyone else. Cousin Ro, what are your major takeaways as we close out here, sir?
Oh man, major takeaways. I mean, I feel like you hit them all. If I was to put them in order, in chronological order, the first thing would be ask intentionally and ask specifically. Sometimes you, as a mentor, may be the person asking. Like I said, there are those situations where you see somebody who you see something in them and you want them to shine or you want them to grow. And so you ask them as the mentor. But if you're the mentee and you're looking for guidance, then intentionally ask the person, hey, this is what I see in you that I admire. And I would love to incorporate into my professional persona. The specifically is ask specifically. That's that asking intentionally, but asking specifically what you want from them. Like, this is what I am trying to get from you. This is how I am trying to upskill, level up myself. And that's what I'm looking to get from you. The second thing being the network. Anytime you're in a mentor-mentee relationship, there is a network. It's almost like, I tell my kids when they leave the house, they represent the Rowe family. Don't embarrass the Rowe family, because when I leave the house and I go to work, I don't embarrass us. So that network, those employee clubs, those employee groups, seeking those things out. Guess what? If they don't exist in your organization, if you go to your HR department and say, I would like to start a club that focuses on professional development, I don't know any organization in America that's going to say, nah, we don't really want people being developed professionally around here. So if it doesn't exist, be willing to take that intentional action and make it happen. And it may be a long little, struggle. I mean, First Row, we're at 400 subscribers now, and that's been months to get to 400. But slowly but surely, you chip away at that goal. All of a sudden, you'll find yourself at all the people in the organization want to be a part of your network. So that's the second thing, is network, doing those side by sides, having those conversations in the lunchroom or in the break room, not isolating yourself, but truly putting yourself out there in some uncomfortable positions, so that way you can have the maximum exposure that you need. And then lastly, but not least, it's about shining. Not about shining because you're in the mentor-mentee relationship, not about shining just because you're the mentor, but it's about shining in excellence in the area that you are in today. And the best way I could put this is if somebody comes to me and they're like, hey, Ro, I want an hour of your time to sit, talk with you, vibe with you, and really just have a deep conversation with you. If I see that they are not serious about the areas of their life that they are currently managing, whether that's professionally or personally, that is going to dictate for me whether or not I take that time to dedicate to them, because our time is our most valuable resource. I'm going to give you this hour and I can't go and collect back on it later. So the only collection that I can collect on it later is the investment in time that I made in you, resonating with you to the extent that it causes you to grow and impact and change the world around you. So if that's the investment I'm looking for, if I look at you and you don't seem like a solid investment of my time, I'm not going to spend that time with you. And so that's why I say shine in a sense of excellence where you are at today. Doesn't mean you have to have every single thing together. Doesn't mean you have to be perfect. However, if people see that you are putting an honest, genuine effort into the growth that you say it is that you want, and you say it is that you seek, and you say it is that you're about, people are willing to take the time, even sometimes at an inconvenience to themselves, to pour into you to help you get to where you want to be. So that's what it would come down to: the ask, the network, and then the excellence. Those would be my 3 key takeaways.
Thank you. Thank you.